It is that time where we welcome you and all of the folks from at the USL Show in, since it's the last Thursday of the month, to go over what has happened in the last 30 days in Championship and League One and Jägermeister. Do you have a Jägermeister Cup anywhere in the at the USL Show offices to represent what's going on in League One? By the way.
Not yet, but I have been doing online shopping and considering.
Okay. Just checking. And we'll get into that a little bit because you literally have to have two separate ways of keeping track of things in USL League One because of the Jägermeister Cup, which I don't know if it's a shot glass or if it's like an actual coffee mug or something. Plus
If it's a coffee mug of Jägermeister, they're not playing a game.
Well, then as long as maybe it's a little Irish coffee with some Jaeger and then different kind of Jaeger bomb or something. I don't know. But I give USL League One credit for finding a title sponsor for this thing and just absolutely running with it and all the puns that you can come up with.
I mean, their hashtag being a shot of glory is incredible.
Oh, goodness. So USL Championship, we'll start with the Open Cup discussion.
Sure.
We still have a couple of teams that are active. The West, I think, goes through Sacramento, and I don't know if it's because of Sacramento on the map being where Sacramento is on the map, but how many folks are kind of poo-pooing Sacramento going, oh, I don't know, man. But everything goes through Sacramento, and Sacramento, you've really got to pay attention to the Republic.
Yeah, the biggest thing for Sacramento that they're going to have to I think that they're going to have to traverse is the injuries to Russell Cicerone and Roro Lopez. Roro's going to be out for the season. Russell's going to be out for about 10, 12 weeks. And that's a big blow, especially with Roro, Rodrigo Lopez, who, is out with a torn ACL. He is very much the emotional leader out there. And honestly, one of the emotional leaders of just the USL entirely. If you were following along what's going on with his son, Roman, it's stuff to just real tearjerker stuff. And it really breaks your heart. That said, it almost feels like that could be a motivational point, right? I'm just going to speak to your audience a little bit. Think about the 2021 Atlanta Braves when Ronald Acuna goes down.
Yep.
Right.
And the 2023 Atlanta Braves when Ronald Acuna goes down.
Yeah, well. But as soon as Acuna goes down, the team rallied around him and they win a championship. And it almost feels like maybe that could happen in Sacramento as well. In the end, every MLS team is going to have to go through the den of the indomitable, and you don't go there and win. You just don't go there and win. When Sacramento are really turning the screws, much like Louisville City, if they are turning the screws like they can, I think they could beat any team in the United States at any level.
And there are folks that don't get to watch the USL Championship as much as you do. And you look at that roster, even with the absences, I mean, they're one of two teams that, as far as I know, still have not got a crooked number in the
only
last
one.
month. Yeah,
they are the only one because Charleston went down to El Paso.
That's right.
So they're the only one, and they're undefeated across all competitions. If people haven't checked out the championship, check out what Kieran Phillips is doing out in Sacramento. Like, we thought Trevor Amon was going to be the big addition. Kieran Phillips is another cut. He's from a different cloth, from the different cloth. I mean, it is unbelievable how much talent that they have up top.
You look at that and the West. Is there any when you break down the West in groups? You break down the Western Conference into groups. Is it Sacramento in a group of themselves? Is there anybody sneaking up on them? Despite I'm not looking at win-loss records because we talk schedule compression and a bunch of different things that can contribute to how things are in early season. But when it comes to the talent on the field, I'm not talking paper. I'm talking talent on the field. Is it Sacramento and then everybody else? Is it Sacramento in the A group and then maybe some A-, B+, Daniel Bryan kind of players and then other groups? How do you see the Western Conference lining up right now this month?
It's hard to separate talent from form, right?
Yeah.
And It's right now Sacramento and New Mexico. New Mexico looks unbelievable. And unlike years past where they've been kind of a paper tiger,
Yeah.
they don't look as impressive on paper, but what they're doing on the pitch is incredible. It is highly sustainable, and Greg Hurst is stunning, just absolutely stunning. Zico Bailey, making that move from a wing back to a central midfielder is one of the smartest things I've seen come out of the USL in recent years. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of it, and it's been game changing. Sacramento and New Mexico, I think, are the cream of the crop in the West. So I think they are an absolute blast.
Now, one of our plus ones, Kefsi, says New Mexico remains the most fun for anyone who hasn't been introduced to their brand of fun.
Yeah, completely agree.
How does Greg Hurst? I mean, Greg Hurst, just a couple of years ago was in Chattanooga in League One, if memory serves. And how does he sneak through and end up in New Mexico and be a part of what's going on there? How does he sneak through all this stuff?
So Hurst, I do believe, was a Union Omaha guy, and he was really well followed. He was unbelievable in League One. And when he comes up, you're just kind of like, okay, so like he was with Rebels, then he was with Omaha, then he goes to Phoenix Rising, and that was when Phoenix Rising weren't very good.
Yeah.
And they had these high expectations, and something didn't click. And I don't know if it was the Rick Shantz era just was coming to an end, the locker room got stale, I don't know. Clearly it affected his confidence. And when he went over to New Mexico, he went to the other side of that rivalry. It didn't quite click the first year either. And this year, I've said this several times on the USL show now, the very first goal of the year should have been your indication that Greg Hurst was about to regain his Omaha version of himself. Mm-hmm. He had a moment where he goes one-on-one with the keeper for Pittsburgh and kind of messes up his dribble a little bit. And last year, 2 years ago, Greg Hurst puts it right into the side netting, covers his, face in his hands and kind of hides. He gains his composure, puts it around a center back, curls it around him, and scores. And that was my moment of, oh, Greg Hurst is back. And that feels like he is just such a confidence player. And coming into what was a falling apart Phoenix Rising, feels like that really could do some damage to the confidence.
Who else right now is, we always kind of like to break things up into GBU, the good, the bad, and the ugly. El Paso has finally made their move. They brought in Wilmer Cabrera, and Wilmer is making, instant returns. It might be new coach bump or however you want to classify it. But what did you think about bringing in Wilmer to be the new head coach in El Paso, first and foremost?
Funny thing about the new coach bump, Ryan Allen from the USL show mentioned it. The last 9 sackings in the USL championship have not resulted in a win or a draw.
Huh.
He is the first one in 9 sackings to actually get it. Granted, it comes with a red card, but it's still at Chattanooga.
Yeah.
Chattanooga. I'm so sorry. Charleston.
Yeah.
Which is very impressive. I think I poo-pooed the Wilmer Cabrera era, if you will, because his time at Rio Grande Valley was weird. He couldn't focus in on a system. He would have something that worked really well, the 4-2-4 highly pressing system. And then you would be like, yes, that is it. They are going to be a competitive team. The very next week, they would go, 5 at the back and be as negative as can be. And it was like, what's going on here? Meanwhile, with Brian Clairau, he stuck to his 3-man back line for too long, and it was horrid to watch. Just tried to force it and it didn't work. I don't know. I think that if you're an El Paso fan, you're bringing in a coach who is willing to tinker. And I think after 3 years of having a coach that refused to tinker with anything, I think it's a welcome sight.
when you look at the rest of the West, who in the last 30 days would classify as the good? Who would classify as the bad? Like I said, this is from visit to visit where I'm my parameters here. So from the last time you were on, who else would classify as good? From the last time you were on, who would classify as bad? And who would classify from the last time you were on as ugly in the West?
The good has been Memphis, more specifically Marlon Santos. Marlon has just been absolute revolution. And if you've noticed, anywhere he goes, he is just a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
He is one of the players that I think that if he were an American-born player, he would be MLS, no question. I think him being Brazilian kind of holds him back. Memphis has been stunning. I think that there are clear issues, but they have really bought into Marlon is really good on the wings. You have just really good players coming in through the middle. Let him do the assists, let him do the scoring, and they've really bought into that. For the good, switchbacks. I've been very impressed with Colorado Springs. I think that they have been fun to watch. I think that they have been just different because I thought they were going to be the worst team in the West, and they have quickly proved me wrong. And with 4 wins in a row, they've been really, really good. The bad Monterey Bay, I still believe in the players that they have on the field. It feels more like a complete roster than years past, but I don't really know why it's not working right now, despite getting a draw against Charlotte. Charlotte, my goodness, I do it again. Charleston.
9-12 in the morning. He's still trying to win. So what happens when you're out of school, man? You can
I know. I went from Chattanooga to Charlotte. None of them are Charleston. The ugly outright Orange County.
Yeah.
Oh my word. They have gone through this transformation of Milan Olowski down there somewhere.
Yeah.
And guess what? Milan Olowski is like in Denmark now. He's not here, and they just still have not figured it out. And we kind of see this with Northern Colorado in League One, where they lose Arthur Rogers, they lose Trevor Amon, and they had that moment of they were a bigger impact than we thought.
Yeah.
And everybody knew how big they were going to be, but I think a lot of people thought that they were going to be like, we can still figure it out. We can run a similar system. Turns out you couldn't, but they figured it out, especially in the Jägermeister. Orange County has not figured that out. Their defense has been okay, which has been their calling card for years. Their attack is frankly toothless without Milan Olowski. I think there's a conversation of Bryce Jamison should be starting, but also he's a fast young player. He's built to be a super sub. But when he's your only bright spot, he kind of deserves a start, and they just still haven't been doing it.
All right, let's flip to the Eastern Conference. We'll go ahead and start with GBU here. The good, the bad, and the ugly of the last 30 days. Who qualifies in the East?
Louisville City, broadly gesturing Louisville City. Like, they're unbelievable.
Do you see what's going on?
Like, last year, they didn't bring in a whole bunch of new players, and they kind of had to make Louisville City had to make a hard choice in the offseason. Do we cut, ties with some of our legends? And they did, and they brought in incredible players, and they have scored 5 goals or more, 3-4 times now. They're ridiculously good. Another good, I do think that Indy 11 have, ever since their mayor came out and said, I was
going to ask about this as a follow-up, but go for it.
Yeah, they haven't dropped a point since their mayor came out and said, we're taking away your stadium and MLS is coming. I don't know. That is, they released a video after the first win about the coaches in the locker room being very candid and being like, this game means more to the play or to the fans than you realize. Mm-hmm. This is bigger than any match that you have ever played in for this community. Nothing will be bigger, was that first game after. And they have kept that same consistency, that same fire. they have been so good. For the bad, Hartford, welcome back to the conversation. Brendan Burke was very open in one of his post-game press conferences in that he had a conversation with the players, a 30-minute conversation before his press conference where he told them, some of you need to get it together or you're out of here. Like, just very frank. And I said something very controversial on the USL show that I'm going to reiterate here.
Sure.
Hartford built their locker room on known locker room cancers. And when it went bad, it got bad.
Well,
I
mean,
think
if you go back to the Open Cup match against NYCFC 2, where the game spiraled completely out of control in the second half, you end up with multiple red cards, and literally it looked like an assistant coach, Romario Williams and Anderson Asaidu, all wanted to fight somebody, if not the folks that were dressed in the yellow jerseys. By the time it was over, I mean, to me, that seems like that moment where everything might have just started going.
Yeah. And I mean, they built their locker room on people who are known issues. They're great talents, but they're known issues around the league. And, Brandon Burke coming out and saying, hey, get it together or you're gone. You're not going to be employed. I mean, they got to win straight off of it. I mean, say what you want about Brendan Burke and whatever, but I mean, that's going to be a season defining moment. And more so a season defining if he sticks to it. If he holds their feet to the fire, I think that is a real game changer. For the ugly, Miami, baby.
Miami, comma, baby. Miami, comma, baby.
Oh man. Their head coach came out and was basically like, we saw the trash talk by the people. We saw what the projections were. And since that moment, they haven't won a match. So maybe they were who we thought they were. I see Del Schaefer in the Twitch pitch saying, is Miami not making any investment? Here's the thing. They made a lot of investment. They spent a lot of money in years past to be bang average. Why not save some money to be just slightly worse?
What does your gut tell you about what's going to happen in Indy?
Everything seems to be pointing to Indy not getting a stadium, but I also highly doubt that they get an MLS team. I think the 11 gets screwed over in terms of the stadium situation, but I think they're going to be alive. I don't think that MLS is coming. I think when you are looking at how loaded of an area the Midwest is between your Columbus, your Cincinnati, your Indianapolis, I don't think it's happening. I do think that the stadium situation, I just don't see it happening at their current location. Now, they may find somewhere else to go, but I think the current iteration of their stadium situation is just kind of dead in the water.
Because we all associate Indy 11 playing at the Mike, and then they came out with the proposal of having their own facility. And now, for those that don't know, the mayor's come out and said, yeah, we want Major League Soccer. And that was kind of news to the rest of the soccer community that's attached to Indy 11 there in Indianapolis. And so now there's this big push about having a new stadium and Major League Soccer. And I'd love to know who's going to cut the check for being the owner there. I've heard nothing of any sort about any kind of an owner for Major League Soccer in Indianapolis, just the mayor sitting there saying, we're going to build this new shiny thing and try and court Major League Soccer. That sounds kind of almost cart before the horsey kind of a deal. But I've heard nothing about any kind of ownership interest. Like I said, it might be the Colts, who knows? But what we've seen with Indy 11 at the Mike, I guess probably the best way that I can phrase it is what Jonathan is phrasing in the Twitch pitch. He says they're making a statement of defiance every time they take the pitch, and I've never been prouder to be a fan of both I'm guessing, taking Jonathan's word, this is a season of defiance by Indy 11.
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, they had that video where the coaches were like, this season means more to the fans than to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's an important thing because the pro rel, I brought it up. It can't go more than a day without bringing it up.
We got a gong somewhere that we hit every
Yeah,
time it gets mentioned.
but with no pro rel,
Yeah.
what is the community really trying to get behind? Obviously, championships. But one thing that will bring a community together, especially with a team that's been around for 11 years, is the threat of killing their club,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
San Diego were selling out their stadium after they announced that they weren't going to be around the next year. That kind of stuff matters. And when their mayor comes out on Indy 11's birthday, like the day of their inception,
Wow.
and said, we're bringing MLS here on the day into that shiny new stadium that we're building for the 11 on the day of their inception.
Yeah.
That's the biggest screw you to the fans that you could imagine. And it's not just that. It's also the women's side. Because if the men's side goes, the women's side, who has been arguably the best team in the W League since their inception,
Yeah.
they're dead too. I don't know, man. I think that it's going to be I think Indy 11 have a chip on their shoulder, and the club knows it, the players know it, the fans know it, the ownership knows it, and they are all on the same page. And how many teams across world soccer can you imagine are in complete lockstep with each other? Usually somebody's not there with them, ownership, players, club, fans. Indy 11 are holistically together, and I think that's huge.
When you look at Louisville and Detroit City, that happened, that was the early game last night. Why do you think Danny Cruz isn't getting looks in Major League Soccer?
Why isn't any of the club coaches in the USL getting a real look at? I said it a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
I will throw my hands up. I know very little about MLS.
Right.
I kind of know what people say about teams. I don't follow MLS. It's just not interesting to me. But I thought with the way that the roster was constructed that Nashville was built for Bob Lilly. They are a team with a lot of defensive pieces with a bona fide superstar striker. That feels like Bob Lilly. That feels like the definition of Lily ball. I doubt he got a phone call. Danny Cruz, I think Danny Cruz is getting hurt by the fact that Lou City has always been good. I think a lot of people would sit there and say anybody would do well in Lou City. Look at the players they have. But I also think that Danny Cruz is top 3 coach in the league. There were people in Louisville who were calling for Danny Cruz to be fired a couple years ago because they didn't think he was good as Hackworth. But I thought he was incredible. I just think that there's just a disrespect there.
So Detroit City, they have 2 matches in hand. They got thumped last night, and it was a 5-1 loss.
Yeah.
For Lou City. They got a couple of matches in hand. They can get some things done. They can work their way out of the jam that they're in. And I say jam with 2 matches, if not 3 in hand, and they're smack dab in the middle of the playoff picture. What did you think about their new proposal about leaving Keyworth and taking over the property that has been dormant for, I think, Detroit Southwest Hospital? What did you think about that announcement?
I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Keyworth. Now, I was corrected in our Twitch pitch on the USL show. I thought Keyworth had been there a long time. Apparently, they had a stadium before that. Before they went to Keyworth, I didn't know that. So they have outgrown a lot of places. And in the end, Detroit needs to own their own ground. They don't own Keyworth Stadium. They are still having to lease it. They are still like secondary leasing. So if something comes up, they get bumped out.
Mm-hmm.
They need to own their own place, and where they've done it, where they have bought the land. And I think that's a key figure for me, that they said Detroit City bought the land. The city of Detroit did not buy the land. Detroit City bought that land. And I think that is a real sign of what they are intending to do. They are still sticking with their morals and putting it in the heart of Detroit. They are really, really just sticking to what they do best. I love it. I think that Detroit City can sell 14,000 easily, especially with what they've been doing at Keyworth. If they got to downtown Detroit, I think more people will come. Shiny new stadium. Plus, Detroit City, while they did get thumped 5-1 last night, it was also Duluth City, wash it away. Didn't happen. They're a fun brand to watch right now. And I think that people would go there and have an absolute blast.
Yeah, doing my quick cursory research while we were talking about it, they started their NPSL days at Cass Tech, one of the big high schools in the area, and they would pull in Cass Tech. I think their key, their top end attendance figure was just under 3,400. Then in 2016, they make this big drive, and the fans come together and pool up about $740,000 to buy Keyworth and renovate the space into what it is now. But as growth has continued there in Detroit City, I think, to your point, I think they're to that next stage where you can't really expand Keyworth because it's basically in a subdivision and it's paired up against railroad tracks. So you've got to find your own space. Yes, it is. And I saw the media reports out of Detroit where, yes, it would be a big loss for the city of Hamtramck and everything that they've done. But I think that as Detroit City continues to grow, this seems like the next logical step in buying your own yard, buying your own space, creating it however you want to do so to take that next step in USL Championship.
I do know that Hamtramck people are a little like, what's going to happen, basically, but also think they came in and made investments. They left the place better than they found it, which if you're looking at someone who's trying to be a true community football club, that's all you can ask for. And Detroit City's done it masterfully.
All right, last question for you before you get out of here to make sure that the cat isn't munching on any of your audio cables. What's going on there at the USL Show HQ in Birmingham Legion before I ask about what's going on the show? What's going on with the Legion who are smack dab in the middle of the East?
They have gone through a tactics change and it's worked really, really well. I think that the team is starting to kind of find their own. I think that, when I talked to Ben Pierman after the Charleston game, he said that before their Open Cup match versus Atlanta, Birmingham was the one team he didn't want to play because they are just a grinding group and they are just full effort all the time. I think that has shown very well. I think their move to the 4-3-3 has been a revolution. Same thing with Jake Roof, who was a fullback center back. He's now playing CDM, and he has been one of the best players on the pitch now. And I've always been a massive Jake Roof fan, so a little biased. But
so what happened with Jake Roof and that tete-a-tete on the touchline a couple matches ago? What was going on?
Juan Herrera and Jake Roof, they had been kind of going at it all night long. The ref gave early yellow cards and thought that'll teach them, and then didn't hand out another yellow card for the full game. So nobody knew where the actual line in the sand was,
right?
Because things that were yellows before are no longer yellows. So a whole lot of frustrations were building up. Jake Roof went to go in on a tackle, rolled on the ball, rolled up on Herrera. Herrera, drops his, elbow on top of Roof's neck. Now, whether he was just trying to get up and use Roof as a stepping stone or he was trying to do damage, I don't know. I'm not here to speculate. But Roof gets obviously upset, pushes him in the neck area, and scuffle goes into the Birmingham bench. Herrera gets a red, Roof escapes with a yellow.
Wow.
So
okay, like I said, I saw the snippet of the video, and I'm like, when you mentioned Jake Roof, I'm like, yeah, I need to talk to you about this. All right, time to cut the promo, my friend. What is going on at the USL show and everything that's going on in your universe?
And CBS is copying us. We were going to Oakland first, so we are doing a pregame show and a postgame show at the Oakland Roots versus Sacramento Republic match. So we are doing our first live show together. So
Nice.
Super excited about that. Things are getting a little bit hairy because CBS just announced 2 days ago that they are also going to be at that match. So I guess we won't get Ethernet cables, but we'll survive. But yeah, that's what we're working towards. I'm about to release a new hammering down kit. So if people want to buy that, that will directly go to funds to send the USL show there. So if people want to support getting us there on location, some fun interviews with coaches, players, and all that kind of stuff, check that out.
Absolutely. At Kaylor Hodges, at the USL Show, with everything that you guys do. Let me know when the jersey comes online, will you?
We'll do it.
Like literally do that. And take care of the cat, and we'll catch up with you next month, last Thursday of next month, unless news breaks and we need to bring you in sooner. Thanks as always for coming on, my friend. Enjoy. No school.
No school.